Can you imagine if in 1965 a different watch had won NASA's space certification? Well, Moonwatch would have a very different meaning today, wouldn't it? Let's talk about one of those other chronographs. Hey guys, I'm Max and welcome back to Hot Ones. So in the early 60s, a man by the name of James Reagan at NASA was tasked with finding a watch worthy of the wrists of the astronauts on the Apollo missions. The 10-point testing system that he came up with was so rigorous that even he didn't believe that any watch would survive. These tests included extremes of temperature, pressure, humidity, and shock. As history would have it, the Omega Speedmaster did last through all the tests and is today what we consider the Moonwatch. But the other contenders, including some big names like Rolex, Breitling, Hamilton, and maybe one that's a little bit more obscure today, which is Wittnauer. Now, no one can say for sure which model Wittnauer has submitted for testing, but what we do know is that around the same time was when Wittnauer began to put the word professional on their dials, following the footsteps of Omega. So today we're going to look at one of these 60s Wittnauer professional chronographs and also ponder how different today's watch landscape would look if this had become NASA's Moonwatch. The Wittnauer reference 7004A chronograph looks like nothing I've seen before. It features this cherry red bezel atop a contrasting matte black dial. This striking bezel tracks both 60-minute elapsed time as well as 12-hour time zones. Remember, bezels from this era did not click, and rather relied on friction, on rotation. The lume for this example, most likely from the late 60s or early 70s, has taken on a strong yellow patina, giving it unmistakable vintage charm. We have here the second generation of the watch, easily identified with this big arrow tip for the minute hand, and an updated movement, which we will get to. The watch features a bicompax design with subdials for small seconds on the left and what I find to be the most endearing part of the design, a regatta countdown timer at the 3 o'clock position with matching burgundy color. Here I have it on a beads of rice bracelet, which I think looks period correct for this watch. This and other affordable Strapsco bracelets and straps can now be found on hotones.shop. In terms of dimensions, the watch is quite large for its day, with a 40mm diameter, 46.5 lug to lug, 14mm thick, but luckily retains the ubiquitous 20mm lug width. Back during this period, brands sourced their chronograph movements from just a few manufacturers. Early models of this watch used the Landeron 248, whereas later iterations like this is powered by the renowned Valjoux 7733. This movement, found on many Breitlings, Hamiltons, and even Heuers of the day, is refreshingly simple and easy to service. The 17-jewel 18,000 bph movement has a 45-hour power reserve. Derived originally from the Venus 188, its cam switching system was an alternative to the column wheel chronograph. Though a bit on the thicker side, its simplicity and affordability helped to democratize the chronograph watch. Now, Wittnauer as a company may have faded into the history books, but in the middle of the 20th century, this was no micro brand. Now, before we go on and talk about all of the achievements of Wittnauer, I'm going to ask you to give this video a thumbs up if you like it so far, and also consider subscribing if you haven't already. This will help us continue to tell these great watch stories into the future. Thank you. The Wittnauer brand was established in 1880 by Albert Wittnauer, a Swiss immigrant living in New York. first by importing watches and eventually by producing them under the Wittnauer name. Wittnauer quickly established itself as a sister brand to Longines and carved out a niche for bringing Swiss quality at a lower price for the American market. In fact, many of its designs looked just like its Longines counterparts. Wittnauer is perhaps best known for its association with aviation, introducing the Wittnauer all-proof watch for the US military in 1928, the world's first waterproof, shockproof, and anti-magnetic watch. It was also worn by Neil Armstrong during the Gemini missions. In 1932, Amelia Earhart made the first solo flight across the Atlantic in a Lockheed aircraft using Wittnauer equipment. After the Swatch Group took over Longines in 1994, Wittnauer now lives under the Bulova umbrella of companies. So as we can see, back in the 60s, Wittnauer wasn't content playing second fiddle to other Swiss brands, and along with having the first female CEO in the business, the company had a reputation for accuracy and robustness that caught the attention of the American Space Agency. Here's the 7004A next to my Speedmaster. It's a bit of revisionist history, but nevertheless fun to imagine these two gladiators going head-to-head deep in the bowels of the NASA laboratories. No, the Wittnauer chronograph did not have the fortunes of traveling to the moon. The story is that its crystal became separated after the first test of temperature and pressure. But that was the same test that warped the second hand on the Rolex, and in fact disqualified every watch except the Speedmaster. Wearing this striking, chunky watch on the wrist, we're taken back to the golden age of mechanical chronographs, just before the quartz crisis. A time when manufacturers went up to each other with daring designs, and us, the consumers, benefited from the plethora of choices from names such as Klebar, Wachmann, Sandoz, companies no longer with us today. Fortunately, with a bit of research and some dedicated hunting on the secondhand market, we can treat ourselves to one of these colorful chronographs with a renowned movement, all for half the price of anything from an AD today. So I sort of impulse bought this watch because of that striking red bezel, but over time I've come to fall in love with the story behind it. Now, if you're looking for a 7004A yourself, beware that early models had regular stick hands and later ones like mine has the arrow tip for the minute hand. Now, there's not a lot of contrasting red bezels out there. The Black Bay Red comes to mind, but in the comments below, let me know what other red bezel watches you like. So thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.